The networking part is probably the most important, I feel. Basically just getting your work out there as soon as you can, because even if you do feel like it's maybe not good enough or whatever, it's good to get someone to give you your perspective on that, and even just feedback on what you could be doing to make it better, rather than hiding it away and hoping that you can get work somehow.
Hey Hatchlings, welcome to the Motion Hatch podcast. I'm your host, Hayley Akins. Hey, and welcome to episode 38 of the Motion Hatch podcast. This is an extra special bonus episode we've got for you this week. On this week's episode, we have Donna McAvoy. Now, she is an awesome freelance animator. Please do check her stuff out. You can find all the links in the show notes at motionhatch.com/38. And she was also a student of the Mograph Mastermind Program that we did in January, February. We are actually launching that again. You can apply from today. So if you're interested in being in a small, intimate group with other motion designers talking about your business, you know, solving the problems that you have on a day-to-day basis, or maybe you want to push a personal project out and you just need that accountability, or you're just getting started as a freelancer, then this could definitely be for you. You can check it out by going to motionhatch.com/mastermind. You can find all the details there and apply. So thanks so much for listening. Let's get into the episode. Hey Donna, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here.
So I wanted to invite you on because you recently started your journey as a freelance animator and you are part of the Mograph Mastermind Program that we have at Motion Hatch. So I wanted you to talk a bit about your journey so far. So why don't we start with you telling us about how you got into the industry?
Sure. So I had a pretty roundabout way, as most people seem to, I think, in the motion graphics industry. I studied computer arts at Aberdeen University, which was a very general course. So it covered a lot of different things, from sort of 3D modelling and 2D flash animation. And it was quite focused on computer games and art for games. So after that, my first industry job was in mobile games, and I worked on that for about a year for a couple of different companies. And then I sort of just decided that games wasn't really something that I was that passionate about, and wanted to get into the animation industry was kind of my goal. I spent a bit of time looking for work there, and eventually got a position as a trainee compositor on a stop motion animated TV show, which was really cool, and that was my first job in the animation industry. Afterwards, I moved to Ireland to work at Cartoon Saloon on a TV show there, and I was working as a scene prep artist, which is a bit like pre-visualization in 3D, but it was for a 2D show, so it's sort of setting up cameras and character models and things like that to work out timing. And so it wasn't quite animation, but it was a lot of dealing with composition and things like that. So it was interesting in its own sort of ways. After that, I sort of freelanced for about a year, but it was only for the one company, really. I was getting quite steady work, and it wasn't something that I'd set out to do, was to be doing freelance animation and illustration, but it just sort of came up and I went with it. So I wasn't actively looking for new work at the time, and I just sort of kept with that client and didn't do much else. So this is kind of me just starting out now to really look at making it a full-time job, basically.
First, you did mobile games. Was that like a full-time job initially after university?
Yeah, so I think it was maybe about 6 months after graduating that I got that job, and that was full-time for, I think it was a 5-month contract. And then after that, I moved to another studio, and it was again full-time, but a short contract again. So it was something like 4 months, I think, for that one.
You basically went freelance because you wanted to move back to Scotland. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I had been in Ireland for about a year and a half at the time, and I loved it over there, and I loved the studio and the people and everything, but I did miss home and my family and things like that. And it just seems like there isn't sort of the same kind of animation industry over here that they have in Ireland. And I think to do the type of work that I want to do, it was kind of the only option if I wanted to live back in Glasgow. So it was kind of more out of necessity than a love for the freelance lifestyle or whatever.
Have you found it quite tricky finding work then, do you think, because you're in Scotland rather than like somewhere else, like London or somewhere like that?
I think that was really daunting at the start. I thought that was going to be an issue. But so far, over the last few months, I've got quite a lot of work, and it's been through local clients. But I'm also working with one that's in London just now, so it's possible. And I think from a lot of what I've been listening to and reading and things, a lot of people say you kind of need about 50% of your work to be remote anyway, whether, like, it doesn't really matter where you're based. But I know that a lot of the things that come up on kind of job sites and things like that are very like short term. Oh, could you come into our studio in London for a week or whatever? So it kind of excludes you from all that sort of thing. But I think I would prefer long term work anyway. So I think for remote work is probably what I'll do when there's no local work going on.
I think it's becoming more and more of a thing now, but obviously a lot of people that listen to this podcast are very interested in remote working because a lot of people are based all around the world. But I think there still is this idea that, it is a little bit easier to get work in like New York, LA, London kind of areas. So I just wanted to ask you a bit about that. So when you first moved back to Glasgow, you weren't working as a full-time freelancer. Do you want to tell us a bit about that kind of time?
It was sort of last July that I moved home, and I hadn't committed to the freelance thing at that point, I don't think. And I was going to come home and start looking for jobs elsewhere if I had to, but that was kind of a last resort. So the first thing I did was signed up for the School of Motion Explainer Camp course. And the reason I chose that one was because it was more about working with clients and schedules and budgets and that sort of thing, which I was quite confident in animation work, but all that side of things I didn't have any idea about, and dealing with contracts and all that kind of thing. So I think that helped me a lot. And it just came at a good time where it started as soon as I moved home. So it gave me, it put me in the right frame of mind to be thinking about client work and how I was going to go about all that. So it was a good motivator, I think, to do something like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like that helped you get more in touch with the motion design community online?
Yeah, definitely. So you join the School of Motion alumni group on Facebook when you complete a course. That's how I found out about Motion Hatch. So those are the kind of two main groups that I'm in just now, and I find them so useful for, even if I don't ask questions, other people are asking things that I've maybe not even thought about, and there's just so much good information on there that you can just come across easily.
Yeah, I think it's really good. And I like all the communities on Facebook and stuff now, because when I first started freelancing, there wasn't really any of that. So it's very different. And I think it's really helping the kind of remote working thing as well. So when you first moved back to Glasgow in Scotland and you were thinking about freelancing and you took the School of Motion course, I just wanted to ask you about what your initial kind of worries were and what kind of fears you had about freelancing.
I think the main thing for me was just a worry about whether I could get enough work to sustain it as a full-time job. And in the beginning, I had quite a lot of savings from my previous jobs and things like that. So I was able to put a lot of time into the course and without worrying too much about work. But I think I should have spent a lot more time at the start looking for new clients and things. I did have a client quite early on, but while I was working on that, I wasn't actively sending out emails to other studios, and I wasn't really preparing for what was going to happen when that contract was finished. So that was the main worry, was just trying to keep enough income and work to sustain it.
What would be your advice to someone kind of in that position now where maybe they don't really have many clients or they're in a kind of remote area? What would you tell them?
Networking, like I know everyone says it, but it actually does work. This is the thing that I always thought before. I was like, oh yeah, but sending cold emails is never going to get me anywhere. But it turns out it actually does. But not just networking by sending your work to studios and things like that, but also meeting other local animators. So I've been to a few different events over the past couple of months and met a lot of people. I didn't realise how many animators there were in Glasgow and freelancing. But I even just emailed a couple of local motion graphics people for advice about sort of local rates and things like that. And through that, I got a couple of referrals as well. So even just reaching out to people, everyone seems to be so helpful and no one's sort of wants you to fail and everyone's looking out for each other. So yeah, I think just networking is probably the biggest thing to be doing. And it's also good to just get out from your desk from, like, I guess a lot of people are working from home and you get a bit crazy.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think it's very true. We're all like sitting in our house going, oh my God, I haven't got any work and, worrying about it, but not actually going out there and meeting people and doing things like that. And I think that's really, really important. You just touched a little bit on pricing as well. And I know that recently you've almost doubled your rates because we were working on that through the Mastermind program. Do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges that you faced around that?
So starting out as a freelancer, I sort of had no idea what I should be charging and what my work was worth, sort of thing. And I'd based my daily rate on what I was getting paid full-time at an animation studio. So it's very different to what freelancers should be charging just because of the whole, it's not a secure full-time job and you've got to think about all your other costs like equipment and even just plugins and things like that, and it all adds up. So I used mainly the communities like Motion Hatch and School of Motion group, and just really appreciated how open people were in there about talking about rates. And I didn't even have to really ask anyone outright, oh, what should I be charging based on my portfolio or whatever. Like, there's so much discussion in there already. You can just search for it and find out what people are saying. And although it varies from area to area what you can charge, I think if you're working remotely, it shouldn't have such a big impact where you're based. But it was tough to sort of go from what I was charging before to now. I had to sort of speak to one of my existing clients about that, and that was from a previous time where I wasn't working as a freelancer full time and had been way undercharging them. But I think from everything, from all the information that I'd got, I knew I was undercharging them, and it was something I had to do to feel comfortable with the work, because I don't feel comfortable charging different clients different rates. I know some people say, oh, if it's sort of a big client, then you can charge a different price to maybe like a startup company. But it's all agencies that I'm working with at the moment, so it doesn't really make much of a difference, I don't think. Yeah, it was an uncomfortable conversation, but something that I think I just had to do.
I guess you felt more confident talking to that client because you had like the support of the communities and obviously like the mastermind group that we were doing together, and as well because you kind of knew what other people were charging because people are having like these conversations and stuff like that. It's like the knowledge is power kind of thing. You felt like confident, which is really good, because I think, people putting their prices up, they're really, really scared to do that. But I think it's about having, trying to get the knowledge. And then also, like you were saying, what I think is really important is that we have a lot of more expenses as freelancers. Like, you have to pay your own tax, you have to get your own equipment, maybe you have to like have an office and all these different things. And like in the US as well, they have to pay for their own healthcare, which obviously we're lucky that we don't have to do that here. But there's all these extra things that people don't think about. And that I think is, like you were saying, really important to think about, because you wouldn't be able to sustain yourself as a full-time freelance animator if you hadn't have done that. And I guess, I just wanted to know like how you felt about approaching that client and how you felt like that went and the way that you went about it, really, just to give people some help about the best way to kind of handle these situations. Because I know that it's not easy to ask existing clients to pay you more, basically.
So I had worked with that client for quite a while before, and I'd never really put up my prices. Like, I think once during a whole year I put up my prices, but it was like £10 or something. It wasn't anything drastic. So they knew that I'd been looking at going into freelance full time, and it was something I wanted to talk to them about in person. So I sort of mentioned it when I was working in their studio one day, that I've been doing some research and I'm going to have to put my prices up. And it was just something that I wanted to give them a heads up about, because it was such a steep increase. They work mainly with startup clients, so it's not something that's kind of in their business model to work with someone charging that amount, I guess. So it was tricky that they sort of came back to me and asked, would you work with us for a lower rate? Just based on kind of our past relationship, I guess. But as much as I would have liked to have done that, it's just I'm not comfortable with charging different people different rates when it's much the same work. You know, it's not as if, because I work mainly with agencies, they come to me with the work and I do much the same thing. It's not as if one client's making life easier than another at the moment. So it just didn't feel right to be charging different prices. So I did offer a couple of options, like maybe doing a retainer or something like that for a reduced rate, or just working on a project rate when they could afford it. I've not done work with them since, to be honest, but it's not something that's really bothered me too much, because I have got plenty of other work in the meantime with my new rate. So I think it is justified. But I definitely appreciate having the mastermind and the other communities available to talk about stuff like that, because in my head I would be like, oh no, am I charging too much? Am I insane? Am I asking for something ridiculous? And without some perspective on that, it's easy to, I guess, waver a little bit. But I'm glad I stuck with it.
Yeah, and I think you're right as well, because like you're saying, it's all about the work really, and about the value that you're giving the client, and you're always giving your client the same amount of value and work, you know, and you're working very hard for them. So I feel like that makes sense that you would be like, this is my rate, you know, and I kind of need to stick to it. But I like the fact that you did try and, you know, offer them some of the ways to maybe make it work more with their business and how they worked, which I thought was really, really great and really professional. So I thought that's really good. And I think it's good advice for people hearing, is not just to be like, you know, it's almost like you don't want to be like, no, I'm just sticking to my rate and nothing else matters. But you also want to kind of have a little bit of, you know, let's have a conversation about this and be professionals and talk about it, because they have a business, you have a business. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, thanks for going into that a little bit more. When we were working together in the mastermind, I was pretty blown away by like your commitment and the progress that you made over the time. I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about what drove you and how that you managed to achieve so much in such a small amount of time.
So when I was working with the previous client and not really looking for other work, I spent so much time procrastinating and looking at things like my showreel and wondering if my work was good enough and tweaking my website and things like that, but not actually sending my work out to anyone or like approaching clients. I think I was too scared. I was like, oh, I've done all the creative part now, and what happens if I send it out there and no one replies and I get no work? So I just kept putting it off. But I think the mastermind was a really good motivator to be, this is the time now, this is me, I'm going to do it. And just setting weekly goals during that was really helpful to me to just not become overwhelmed as well. So previously I would become a bit daunted by the fact that I was trying to find work, but also still trying to learn things about business and also about the creative side, and breaking that down into manageable goals was really helpful for me.
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying is, you know, really important. Like, it's about having like these bigger goals that we have, but trying to break them down into more smaller, manageable chunks each week. And I think you're right. I think that does really help. But it's also about, you kind of sticking to that and being like, this is what we're doing, and having quite a big focus to get your stuff out there and, get yourself out there more. Like you were saying earlier, you went to a lot of events recently and emailed a lot of other freelancers and different companies and things like that. And I think that really helped too.
For me, it feels like a lot of things have happened at the right time for me. Like in the last few months, there have been quite a lot of relevant networking events around Scotland. But I don't know if it just happens to be luck or if it's just that I happened to start looking and found like maybe this sort of thing goes on all the time and it's just that I hadn't been looking properly before.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's probably because you were like looking out for it like actively. That always helps, because then if you're not doing that, you're not going to find them and you're not going to go. But And I know that you were making connections before you went to the events and stuff as well, and then meeting up with people there, which I think is really smart too.
I think a lot of it as well is I'd maybe done a lot of preparation work before the mastermind, but hadn't really pushed it. So things like getting my journal together, and I'd sent out a few little emails to people and never really thought anything of it. And then some of them take like 4 months to get back to you, and then all of a sudden you've got a job with them and things like that. Like a lot of little bits of preparation that I did over the last few months just kind of came together just now as well. So it's not a thing that happened over the 8 weeks of the mastermind in itself. Like I had been working towards it before, but that just really helped push me to get a bit further, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes you can like email someone, they'll be like, yeah, we got work straight away. But like sometimes, it takes ages. I remember I had a conversation with Sander recently, Sander van Dijk, on the podcast. And he was saying like he got in touch with, I think it was Squarespace or something like that. And they had a connection there. And then they didn't get back to him to do a project till like a year later. So I think that's just everyone needs reminding of this, that it's not kind of like you say like, oh yeah, you do something or you put your reel out and like all of a sudden like you have loads and loads of work. I mean, that might happen, but it's all the little things that you do before that and all these like mini connections that you make and building your network, which I think is the most important thing. And like you said about having the small goals every week and just making sure that you're kind of staying on the path, and what you were talking about earlier with, and when you have got work, not just kind of resting on your laurels a bit, I guess, and consistently trying to network and get out there and show people you're real and meet people and things like that, even if you have got lots of work right now. So yeah, I think that's great. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're up to now?
Yeah, so I'm working on a few contracts just now. One's with the Glasgow Science Centre, and I'm just making some animations for one of their clients is making a new website. So it's sort of little explainer videos aimed at school kids. But that was one that I got through emailing someone that I found through their website back in November. And they just got back to me in February asking for a quote for work. So that's like just based on a cold email that I randomly found. It's turned into a 3-month-long contract pretty much. And I'm also working on a contract with a company in London that I found through the Motion Hatch Facebook community as well. So those are my kind of what I'm up to right now.
So you're very, very busy then.
Yes, a little bit. The new challenge is managing how to be this busy without going insane.
In freelancing and in animation, motion design in general, it's always like you like overcome one challenge of like, oh my God, I need some more clients. And then the next challenge is like, oh my God, I need less clients. I need like more time and stuff like that. So that's really funny. So if someone is out there who's kind of feeling a bit stuck right now and is not sure what to do next, do you have any advice for them?
The main thing is probably the communities. So if you are stuck with a particular question, you can always ask in there and there's always advice going. Or even if you just search in some of the groups, you'll get some information because people have already asked pretty much everything. I feel like the networking part is probably the most important. I feel basically just getting your work out there as soon as you can, because even if you do feel like it's maybe not good enough or whatever, it's good to get someone to give you your perspective on that, and even just feedback on what you could be doing to make it better, rather than hiding it away and hoping that you can get work somehow.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Like you're saying, is like try and show people your work and get feedback, you know, as long as it's constructive. And then also, like you're saying, joining the online communities and things like that, I think is really good. And networking in your local area, basically doing all of the things,
yes,
all of the things that you've done and that everyone should be doing all the time. But I think it's just good to have these types of conversations, because I think that everyone kind of doesn't think about it, or they need reminding, or they just need a little push to be like, no, come on, get your showreel out there. You are good enough. Like these kind of things. So I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, just hiding away in your house isn't going to get you anywhere. So it's good to meet new people as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, what have you got to lose? Like absolutely nothing. So I hope that people listening to this, if they're worried about putting themselves out there in their work, then please don't be, and you know, try and get feedback from other people in the industry and stuff like that. Because I feel like what I really like about the motion design industry is that everyone is really open and generally quite nice people. So it's not that difficult to kind of reach out to people and, like you say, ask for help from other freelancers or in the Motion Hatch community, or, you know, join some of the School of Motion courses or join the Motion Hatch Mastermind Program. And, you know, there's all these different things that you can do. And I think it's just like really smart. And I'm personally really grateful of like a great online community as well as local communities too.
Yeah, definitely. Like I would recommend the Motion Hatch Mastermind to anyone, because it's easy to say to everyone, yeah, just get your work out there, just network, but it's sort of the step-by-step process of doing that you really do need to break it down and not become overwhelmed by it, and just having people to push you to do that as well is just invaluable. So I definitely recommend it.
Oh, thanks. So what kind of goals do you have going forward, and how have you got a plan in place to get there basically?
That's one thing that I've sort of fallen off the wagon with the last few weeks, just because I have been so busy. I think that Mastermind literally ended 2 weeks ago and I've not set any goals since, but basically it's just to keep up with the networking side of things while I'm working, try not to let that slip, and make sure I just have enough work set up for the next couple of months. I also had a part-time job over the last few months because I did get a bit scared that freelancing might not be as steady as I'd like it to be. So it was just sort of a financial security there. So I think over the next month or so, I'm going to be able to leave that. So that's kind of one of my goals on the horizon. But yeah, just keeping up what I'm doing for now, I think. I don't have any crazy ideas about expanding my business or anything right now. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing for a while, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think you've done like pretty awesome in the past few months. And like you say, like even the months before that. So I think it's good to just keep going and doing what you're doing and like enjoying it a bit as well, and maybe having a little bit of a relax.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't work too hard.
Having my weekends back would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask you, what would you say to yourself, either when you first get started or if you met someone now who was just starting freelancing, what advice would you give to them?
I think a lot of the stuff that I've already mentioned, but just don't be frightened to reach out to people when you need to, and stop procrastinating, because that seems to be a thing that a lot of people do, where you do just sit and tweak your website and change colours and things like that. That's not going to make that much of a difference, but once you're out there meeting people in real life, it seems to count for a lot more than a showreel on a website might do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great advice. So do you want to tell the audience where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, my website is donnamcavoy.com, and I've got my social links on there, which I promise I will start using more, because that was supposed to be one of my goals from the mastermind, but I've definitely not done that in weeks, so I'll try.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
Thanks again to Donna for coming on the show. It was super cool to talk to her. I think she gave so much great advice. And yeah, if you want to find out more about her or any of the links that we mentioned, do go to motionhatch.com/38. You can find everything there. And we are opening the applications up for the next Mograph Mastermind Program, which is the May-June session. So if you're interested in finding out more about it and getting into one of the groups that we have, then please do go to motionhatch.com/mastermind. You can find all the information there. I look forward to reading your application. Thanks again for listening all the way to the end. I appreciate you. See ya.